trading action. It's at $101.46 a barrel, but it's off 7.5%. So you're right. Early this morning, down a little bit more, but it's nice to see that bounce to the downside. I think what happened when the oil was run up in the $120, $130 a barrel earlier in the month was a reaction to the war and the global conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and not a complete understanding of how the effects of that were going to play out into the entire energy sector. And I think what's happening now, over the last couple of days and over the weekend, is realizing that while it'll not be merely symbolic, the impact might be more minimal than we thought. So to put some context around that, Russia exports, before the ban on President Biden, between 8 and 10% of their oil production to come over to the United States. So like I said, it's not merely symbolic, but in the grand scheme of things, it's more of maybe a minimal impact than what was initially thought, and you're seeing that reflected in the spot price today.
So is it safe to say that this is a correction? It was a correction for the overreaction when there was so much uncertainty of what, in fact, the real-world impacts were going to be when it comes to oil and gas?
Yeah, correction, or maybe a correction to the overreaction initially when that conflict really started to get underway, which is a lot of times what happens, you see, especially in the energy market, on singular events, while not immaterial. The initial shock and the news, the 24/7 news, and sort of some of this draconian type of rhetoric that can get put around it causes a little bit of an overreaction to the upside on oil prices, and you're seeing that sort of level out now, which is a good thing. I think everybody would take some relief into the fact that the price per barrel is coming down.
Yeah, well, and with the expectation that, if the price per barrel is coming down, that means what I'm paying at the pump is going to hopefully be coming down in the near future as well, because we're breaking records there when it comes to what the average price per gallon is. I'm not sure if if you have any insight on what you can expect. I think it usually takes a couple of weeks for the price per gallon to come down after price per a barrel here. Do you have any insight on that?
Just a little bit. I do know that there is a correlation, although it's not a direct one-to-one correlation, meaning that if you have a 10% reduction in oil price per barrel, you don't always see that, especially initially. You're correct, Tyler. You won't see that for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks of reflection in the gasoline price, because that raw crude oil has to make it through the refineries, et cetera, before it reaches the final destination that it's end consumer point in the marketplace. So you are correct in that there is a correlation. It's not as one-to-one as a person might think, and it takes a while to get there. But two-part answer to that question is, what's the prediction amongst the financial community for oil prices and gasoline prices as we work through the spring and into the summer? We believe that it's going to remain high. By high, I mean into that $4 to $5 range.
Brian, you talked about maybe this being a correction of the overreaction. I'm curious if there's more to this. I mean, since then, you mentioned that we had a ban on the imports of Russian oil. There's been requests to other areas of the world to start pumping more. There's been talk of getting more oil out of the reserves, to kind of flood the market, if you will. Is there anything else globally that's driving this? I think about China. I think having more COVID lockdowns. I'm just curious, is there more to it than just simply, hey, everybody, take a breath, calm down. This isn't going to drive up to 150. Or is it really just that simple? Everybody took a breath, said, okay, we can deal with this.
Well, I think our reaction today is exactly that. Everybody's just taking a deep breath, calming down. Some of the other things, like you talked about with our partners in Venezuela and some of the other parts of the world, that's been mostly just talk, rhetoric, and speculation. We haven't actually seen anything concrete come out of those discussions. OPEC has been largely uncooperative in past requests from the United States to ramp up their production and the various reasons for that. But outside of the scope of what happened today in the markets we're seeing, this is, simply a reaction to, the overreaction, I guess, or a correction today. Now, Tyler, if we see this sustained over the number of days or in the coming weeks, then there's going to be external factors like you just referred to on the global setting that are going to influence the oil prices more going forward.
Brian, I'm curious, there's been a lot of sanctions. There's been a lot of private businesses deciding we're not doing business in Russia, McDonald's being a big one, some of those big chains. Has that impacted just the general market as far as the stocks go?
You have seen some impact. I know the price of McDonald's the price of McDonald's stock reacted to the downside on that news. Of course, they have, I don't know how many hundreds of restaurants there, but it was going to be a significant hit to their bottom line from an overall company perspective, withdrawing from the Russian market. So you have seen on a select individual but company by individual company basis some effect with that. But in terms of the overall broader based market indices, very little effect, with respect to the geopolitical conflict in Ukraine from Russia, more so on the individual company level, like McDonald's you called out.
Sure. Okay, and that's what I was going to ask is when we think about, I don't know if I want to use the term spooked, when it comes to the oil and gas side, saying, oh, geez, this is really bad. And then if you don't see that reflected in the general market, what's the reason? Why is there a discrepancy between the two? Is it basically just, all right, there's an understanding that the world had to take action against Russia? Can you walk me through why there might be a difference in attitude and a difference in approach?
Approach mean from an individual company versus a broader based market indice?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I think so. A lot of companies in the S&P 500 have varying degrees of involvement in the global. When we talk about having a global economy, but you might have a company that does 80 to 90% of its business domestically here in the United States, maybe some in Canada, maybe some in Mexico, but then you don't get involved into other continents. Whereas other companies like maybe Coca-Cola or McDonald's, or some of those blue chip companies that have a vast global penetration into the international marketplace, that's going to impact their bottom line more. So that's what I mean when I say it affects one company much more so than a different company. It depends on their span of business.
Sure.
The broader base indice tends to try to price these geopolitical events in advance in speculation. The markets look ahead of time as much as they can, anywhere from 12 to 18 months in advance. While they didn't predict this global geopolitical conflict, they do try to price in the risk percentage or what the likelihood of an event is happening. So they're not really correlated, one company versus another versus the broader indice from that respect.
Brian, final question before I let you go. He said if oil prices stay down below this mark for an extended period, then maybe we'll see some relief. Is there a set time frame? Is that 2 weeks? Is that 4 days, or is it just kind of fluid at this point?
It's a more fluid than any specific time frame. There's other variables at play, Tyler. There's a lot of political discussion back and forth about constraints around U.S. production and things like that. I don't want to go down that path, but there's a possibility that we'll see some production levels raise up, not only from our partners globally, like you mentioned, Venezuela, but there are ways to ramp up production domestically here in the United States. And there's a possibility that those types of things will influence beyond the next couple of weeks, which would have a downward pressure on oil prices and gasoline. And I think everybody would be happy to see that.
I think we'd all be in agreement there, Brian. I don't think anybody's real excited when they have to go open up the wallet and pay at the pump right now. Brian, I'm out of time. I appreciate the insight, man. You take care, and we'll chat again soon, all right?
All right. Thanks, Tyler. You have a nice afternoon.
Yeah, you do the same. Brian Bruce, Legacy Wealth Management. Got to get you a weather update from Abby Miller, who's behind the big board. Too Tall Tom is on vacation this week. We'll wrap up the first hour of Afternoons Live next.
Right now it's 30 degrees in the metro with 2 miles an hour of wind, but we could get up to 5 miles an hour shifting to the west. Tonight is mostly clear, low 25, south winds 10 to 20 miles an hour. Tomorrow's mostly sunny, high of 38, and highs Thursday through Sunday in the 30s to mid 40s.
I've only got like a minute time before I got to get out of here, according to Abby Miller, who's been producing for the first hour. You crushed the weather. You were so nervous. First time
Crushed
doing
it. I need to
Nailed
apologize, though. There's 0 miles an hour wind. And there was 2 when I said it.
No wind out there. It's a pleasant day out there. I'd said at the top of the show, though, that I had some 38 special tickets to give away. And you were really excited about it, so let's put you to work so you can
Is
get
the time
that.
now?
Time's now. 237-5948. How about you be caller number 8 for 38 special? Really put Abby Miller to work. Well, I appreciate
Or number 38.
Yeah. Keep those phone lines coming. 237-5948. That's a week from Friday. Second hour of After His Live, I've got Amy Eiler going to be behind the board. Abby, appreciate it. We'll wrap up today with Derek Hansen. We'll talk about sports as well. You may this microphone, your cell phone, the whole second hour, whatever you want to talk about, I'm here for you. I'm Tyler Axis. Stick around. KFGO time is 3:05, fast approaching 3:06. We'll check in with Paul Juergens, that KFGO News Center, get you all the latest headlines. Start off the show by talking about how many deer I've seen when I was driving up north, and I want to thank our listener for sending in a photo to the studio here, saying that, you know what, Highway 9, rural Glendon, also just crazy amounts of deer. They are out there. So all the concern I had about some kill-off because of the diseases that have been moving east, you know, my concerns have settled down just by seeing the sheer numbers that are out there today. You can continue to let me know where you're seeing and if there are crazy amounts. I know not everyone is seeing the same numbers that we are in our part of the world, but I'd encourage that conversation at 35270. That's the Ag Consultants of North Dakota Text Club. Phone lines are open as well at 237-5948. In fact, I'm coming back to you right after this KFGO News.
KFGO News, mostly sunny, 31 degrees. I'm Paul Juergens. Fires caused heavy damage to the Lake Park, Minnesota American Legion. Police Chief Brady Burnside says there was significant heat and smoke damage, mostly to the interior of the building. That fire was discovered last night, and the east wall that burned through to the outside contained a large number of photos of auxiliary members which were destroyed. Burnside says decades of the club's history was lost. However, firefighters were able to save other memorabilia, including some military items from another part of the building. No one was in the building when the fire broke out. The state fire marshal's office is investigating the cause. The federal DOT has ordered that SkyWest Airlines continue to serve 19 smaller cities until a replacement airline can be found.
The Utah-based airline, flying under the United Express brand, notified the DOT last week that it planned to eliminate service by June 10th. It cited a lack of pilots for the decision. The flights are offered as part of the government's Essential Air Service program. The DOT order prevents SkyWest from discontinuing service until an alternate airline is in place. Interested carriers have been asked to submit their proposals by April 11th. SkyWest has been providing daily flights between Devil's Lake, Jamestown, and Denver since 2014. Tasha Carvel, News Radio, KFGO.
2 passengers in a car that was used to flee a traffic stop were arrested by Clay County deputies after that vehicle got stuck and the driver managed to slip away. Sheriff Mark Empting says a deputy attempted to conduct a traffic stop early yesterday morning on 60th Avenue South. The driver continued eastbound with speeds reaching 80 miles an hour. The driver then drove down a dead-end road where the vehicle became stuck near I-94. The driver then ran. A passenger, 36-year-old Martin Torres Jr., also tried to free the struck vehicle before he ran away. Deputy used a taser and a canine to capture him. Torres also had an outstanding warrant for fleeing and gun violations. Another passenger in the vehicle was taken to the Clay County Jail for an outstanding warrant. Deputies plan to take the driver into custody once an arrest warrant is issued. Former Minnesota Republican Party Chairwoman Jennifer Carnahan is getting into the race to replace her husband, Jim Hagedorn. In Congress, Carnahan says she is committed to continuing her late husband's legacy of fighting to secure the border, defending conservative values, and safeguarding the integrity of elections. Carnahan joins a crowded field of candidates, including at least 8 other Republicans, along with 6 Democrats and 1 legal marijuana now candidate. Congressman Hagedorn died last month. KFGO Weather Center forecast, lower 30s for a high this afternoon. Will be clear overnight, 25 below. Mostly sunny, high of 38 degrees tomorrow. Mostly sunny, 31. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
Congratulations to Marshal for winning the 38 special tickets, by the way. I have plenty more to get out between now and then, which, of course, then is a week from Friday. Going to be at the Shooting Star Casino. Thanks for everyone else that tried. We'll do it again at some point. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. We'll give you plenty of opportunities. Amy Eiler behind the board. Abby Miller is out. Derek Hansen's going to be the final hour because we're going to recap the weekend that was in sports, which there is a lot to get to. With sports, we're thinking Twins. You're thinking Kirk Cousins. We already touched on Tom Brady, sort of. We touched on the fact that somebody bought what he thought was the last touchdown football from Tom Brady for like $500,000, full of regrets today as well. But I want to touch on a couple of things here. One was the coverage that we've been seeing from Ukraine locally here, and something that stood out to me, but also this daycare shortage that we've had some conversations, I think, over the last few weeks about this and how that's just slowing people down from getting back into the workforce, because you can't find anyone to take care of your child so you can go work 8 to 5. And that's playing out not only here in the metro area, but in those smaller rural towns. Because that's what I was hearing this weekend when I was back up north as well. And in fact, there was a great write-up out of Rugby about this very issue. When you think about all the number of spots available to have someone hired to come in, do the job, especially a young family, to get and move into some of these spots to take up a good paying job. Well, you can't do the job if you can't find someone to watch your child during those hours. And it's an issue that's been prolonged, and it's seemingly just getting worse. Now, I don't know if it's because in part of trying to improve the quality of some of these facilities. I know that there's been an attempt to balance out some of this when you're on the state level being regulated, whether it's about the number of people you can have, number of students per worker you have, or some of the other requirements that some people are pointing to, saying, look, they're making this a little too difficult to have us be successful in this realm. So they just close up. And this continues to snowball in a way of which you're losing out on daycare providers, and then you're having fewer people to watch your children, which means you got fewer people out in the workforce. My question is to you, what do you do to fix it? I know that every time we broach this subject, I get the same messages and say, Tyler, this is no place for the state or federal government to get involved. If you don't collectively do it by either providing resources or the facilities or what A, B through C, then I don't know what's going to do it. Because we can say, look, if these businesses would just step up and provide some of this, then that would solve it. They haven't been doing it. They have not been doing it to the depth of which I think is obviously required just by watching that unfold in real time to help alleviate the situation for potential employees. Now, I don't know if that means allowing a spot at any given facility to have it right on site. I think that is, it's doable for some of those bigger operations. You think about your colleges, you think about your hospitals, you think about some of those other 100+ employee facilities that might be able to afford it, but also to provide the space. But if you're a small business, I don't know what the answer is for you. And if you are a small business that's figured something out to help out your employees through daycare, I would love to give you this platform to explain how you're making it work. Because right now, when I'm giving you a real world example, just here in Fargo, and it's an isolated one, but I know it's not the only one, in which an employee went through the entire process, went through the 3 interviews, had the background check, to where the offer was out there. She thought that she had the daycare established, that this was going to be what she was going to be doing so she could show up for work on location 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, only to have the daycare pull up. Didn't have enough spots to where she had to now go back and ask for the employer to adjust whether it was a schedule or can I do some of the hybrid to where I'm working at home Tuesday, Thursday, and I could try to get in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Thankfully, some businesses, this one included, said, yep, we can make that work because we value you as a potential employee. We offered you the job because we see what you can bring. Not every business has that opportunity. So what do you do to fix it? What do you do for the daycare providers and the parents that are in need of that daycare to make sure that there's the spot available and that, quite frankly, you can have the parent show up to work? Because whatever we're doing right now, it isn't working. You're having too many of these instances of families saying, well, I've either got to become an employee or a stay-home parent because we just don't have the facilities here. Laney studio line's open at 237-594. You can also text into the iConsultants of North Dakota text club at 35270. A lot of more messages coming in about deer population out there. Tyler, near Gary, Minnesota, 250 or 250 plus herds on either side of Highway 32. One more before I take a quick break here. Tyler, I'm more concerned that the Minnesota DNR won't allow me to feed the deer that are struggling from the hard winter. Not concerned about the one deer they found with CWD, chronic wasting disease. Shot over 300 deer because of that one, and 0 tested positive. So some of the maintenance coming in and some of the population control you're concerned. I'll come back to some of those right after this. It is 3:15 on a Monday afternoon. I'm Tyler Axenis, and you got locked into KFGO Fargo. I mean, if you're going to tell me that the private sector is supposed to be the one that resolves this when it comes to childcare, and not being able to find the facilities or find the workers to do that, meaning you're not getting those parents to be able to take a full-time job. If the private sector is not doing it now, then why in the world wouldn't we throw some dollars at it collectively through the state, through the feds to alleviate it? I mean, we talk about all the other build-on infrastructure, whether that's the roads, the internet. I mean, you have your own definition for it. But if you think about that pipeline of employees, and this being one of the biggest factors, then why would you not support throwing something out there to try to help this out? I mean, if you are going to complain about nobody's wanting to work, and then they're telling you, well, here's why I can't work, because I can't find someone to take care of my child during the day. It's not that they don't want to work. It's that they can't find a way to make it work for their family. And if the private side, if the businesses aren't going to allow for this, in whatever shape or form, which I haven't heard from very many of you out there saying, well, this is what we're doing. Well, then my question is, why are you so reluctant to have other means to get this resolved, or at least get the steps going in the right direction to where you can remove the barrier? You got the parents both able to work. And this isn't just a mother thing either, fellas. I mean, if we're thinking about the collective way of which benefits come down, you think about how every family now is almost reliant on two incomes. I mean, how many fathers have now stepped away from employment as well? This whole situation not going to be resolved by just saying, well, we know it's there, and cross our fingers and hope it just resolves itself, because it hasn't. And this didn't pop up overnight. I think it was accelerated, certainly over the last 2 years. But if you've got school districts in rural parts of the state saying we can't find employees because there's not enough childcare, if you've got businesses down here in Fargo saying the same thing, you know that this is a universal problem across all parts of the region, then why aren't we doing anything about it? I don't know how much money it would take. And I don't know if there's any other critiques that you have to be made as far as capacity goes, but the fear then is you're going to diminish the attention that this child gets in that facility and that care while the parent's away. But that doesn't mean we just throw the hands up and say, well, there's not much more we can do because this isn't a role for the state. Because you haven't made the argument why it's not. And you haven't convinced me why it's not anyway, and I'm giving you the opportunity to do just that. Because every other time that I'm either out in the rural parts, or if we're just talking about why we're not finding employees here, either you get two things. You say, well, just pay them more, which is a factor here, but that's been happening now. I mean, you've been seeing more people getting higher wages at a variety of different, employment opportunities. So you've got that. Okay, that's the private side is starting to improve on that. There has been very little that has been addressed on this side, which is the number two issue. You got pay, you got childcare. So the question is pretty simple. I guess then what do you do about it if you're not going to allow the states? Because you don't have enough capacity on the private side to be dealing with it. And that's why we're seeing out of the Pierce County Tribune over this weekend why rugby in the school district, and this is their quote saying we've got a daycare crisis in this community. And that the whole last Friday with their American Medical Center up there, they had needs for not only the patients, but they had needs for the employees and the whole community, and yet nothing is coming about it. I think it's time that you have some sort of a plan going forward. And if I'm one of those candidates that's out there trying to figure out what I'm running on in this next election cycle, you bet your bottom dollar I'm including this in one of those proposals. 237-5948, that's the Laney studio line. You can also text in to 35270. That's the Eye Consultants of North Dakota. We'll come back with this. Also, some more messages coming in about deer populations. We'll see what's coming up with Rusty Halverson as well. 3:25 is your Monday KFGO time. I'm Tyler Axis. Don't go anywhere. We'll get you caught up with KFGO News. Paul Jurgens in just a moment. When we come back, on the flip side, you know what? We're going to head out to Bismarck. Christopher Jones is executive director of the Department of Human Services, somebody who took this job a couple of years ago. And one thing that I've admired the most about visiting with Christopher Jones is his admittance of coming into this agency and not understanding up front the need to address childcare and how much he's learned about the need over his time taking on this agency, which has a big footprint on a lot of areas, this being one of them. So we're going to see what the latest has been on the state level. And again, the reason why this is the topic that we're going down, because it's one, quite frankly, that hasn't gone anywhere since we started the conversation. But when you've got reports coming out that you have school board members hearing from teachers and their concerns that they don't have enough child care in their communities, whether that's the size of Fargo, West Fargo, Rugby, which is the one that I've heard it from the latest year. All right, then let's use this to push the ball forward. So we'll see what they've been doing at the state level. Chris Jones joined us. Final hour, we'll talk about sports. We got Kirk Cousins, Tom Brady. All of that's going to be on the table with Derek Hansen. I'm Tyler Exodus, your host. Amy Eiler behind the board with you till 5 o'clock here on KFGO.
KFG News this hour brought to you by Pioneer House Assisted Living, offering the independence of your own apartment with the convenience of extra assistance when needed.
Mostly sunny, Fargo-Moorhead 32 degrees. I'm Paul Jurgens. The Minnesota Fire Marshal's office has been called in to investigate a fire that caused heavy damage to the Lake Park American Legion. It was reported by a passerby shortly after 8 last night. Police Chief Brady Burnside says no one was in the club at the time, and there's no indication of arson.
Very hot fire. They expect there to be a lot of heat damage. The area of the fire, lots of debris, so they haven't quite got through into that to see what the cause was. Lots of smoke damage. The fire chief, Dave Stoffel, did comment to me about it was a very, very hot fire, one of the hotter fires they've had to fight.
Lake Park firefighters are assisted by departments from Callaway, Hitterdall, Audubon, and Hawley. 32, this is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. Senator Amy Klobuchar says we stand with Ukraine and against Russia. She tweeted from Poland over the weekend. She was meeting with Ukrainian refugees along the border.
And they just are fleeing to safety in Poland. The kids, one of them was going to go to university. Little kids scared, hearing the bombing in the middle of the night. And they just keep coming.
He's been in space for nearly a year and a half, and as Al Schock reports, there's some concern about getting him back home.
An American astronaut who grew up in the Twin Cities is still scheduled to leave the International Space Station and land on Earth on March 30th. He would come home in a Russian spacecraft. Stephen Clark is with spaceflightnow.com.
A message or video, I think, a couple of days ago seemed to be in jest about leaving an astronaut on the space station, but this is serious business. It's life or death. Spaceflight is a risky endeavor.
Social media posts from Russian space leaders may be making things more tense than they should be. Russian space officials say suggestions the American may be left stranded were just a joke. Astronaut Mark Vande Hei graduated from Benilde St. Margaret's High School and St. John's University.
The National Data Collection System shows the number of child abuse reports in North Dakota was up last year, but the number of victims dropped. Officials at Child Protection Services say the increase in reported cases may be up because people are more vigilant about contacting authorities of suspected abuse and because North Dakota shifted to a centralized reporting system. Data shows there were 16,907 reports of child abuse last year in the state. Of those, 1,349 children were found to be victims of abuse. Plans to take down a memorial at the intersection where Dante Wright was shot and killed by a police officer are on hold after his family complained. Wright's mother said she, her husband, and the family's attorney will meet with Brooklyn Center officials. She says the memorial is not hurting anybody. Daunte Wright was killed last year after officers pulled over the 20-year-old man for having expired license tags and an air freshener hanging from his rearview mirror. Kim Potter said she confused her handgun for her taser when she shot Wright. She was sentenced last month to 2 years in prison. Fargo-Moorhead, low 30s for our high this afternoon. We'll stay mostly sunny, mostly clear then overnight, and 25. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, high in the afternoon, 38. Mostly sunny, it's 32. Paul Juergens News Radio, KFGO.
Rusty Alverson joins me in the KFGO studio.
Hello, sir.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
You teased us last hour. We're talking about some CRP.
Yeah.
Been on people's minds. I mean, in fact, the conversation that's been pretty much carrying a lot of people's thoughts in the text club is how much deer I've seen out there.
Oh.
You know, and just the wildlife. When I was driving up north, I was surprised to see the numbers I did.
Okay.
But we think about CRP and a number of things. Conservation obviously been one, but that habitat as well.
Yep.
So it was just encouraging to see.
Yeah, well, a weird twist, Tyler, on CRP.
Mm-hmm.
With this conflict in Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia, Ukraine being such a large exporter of wheat, a big producer there, sunflower oil. We've talked with Frayne Olson about all the different things they produce. And there have been some calls among some people about opening up CRP land to plant so we can grow more crops because of this conflict. Okay. Now, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack at Commodity Classic last week, he was asked about a letter from Senator John Bozeman of Arkansas, the ranking member, Senate Ag Committee, to provide some flexibility on deadlines and sign up for the Conservation Reserve Program. Now, the deadline for general CRP sign up was set for March 11th. But Vilsack says CRP has a lot of flexibilities built into it already that allows for haying and grazing under certain conditions, such as drought, among other things. Now, I've seen some headlines, Tyler, clickbait type stuff about in the EU that, for example, farmers in Germany are going to start plowing up conservation land to grow wheat. I don't know if that's really a thing, but it is a topic that a lot of people are talking about. And this kind of came up with University of Illinois economist Scott Irwin. He tweeted not too long ago that he thought we should open up CRP acreage to grow more crop, more wheat and whatnot. The secretary not on board with that idea right away, perhaps a knee-jerk reaction talking about that, but it is a topic that people are talking about.
No, because I've been hearing that as well. Like you say, we had Frayne Olson on this show because the early stages of all this, we knew about what it could potentially do to oil and gas prices. But also, as far as, like you say, being the breadbasket over there when it comes to wheat, what's that going to do to those commodity prices?
Yep.
So it's on the minds of farmers and people, quite frankly, that just go buy groceries.
Yeah.
I'm curious to learn a little bit more about Vilsack saying, hey, look, we're very flexible, because one of the things that you'll hear in a shop or a Quonset, and anytime CRP has been brought up, is, well, some of the misinformation saying that this is forced upon when it's voluntary.
Correct.
But also, it's once you sign up, man, you're locked in, forever. And hearing that there's flexibility, I think some of that information needs to get out a little bit more as well.
Yeah, according to the secretary, there is flexibility. And on these airways, CBS National News faced the nation over the weekend, I believe it was, on Sunday. They talked about how inflation may be here to stay with us for perhaps the next 12 months, and that inflation will impact fuel prices and also food prices at the grocery store. So this is a topic that is on the minds of a lot of folks. We just can't ignore it.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it to our attention today, all right?
Yep, you bet.
You come back tomorrow, not next hour. Unless you want to come back and talk sports. I'll save that chair for you if you want.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Rusty Halverson, Sarah Heinrich, multi-award-winning egg journalist, KFGO.com for more. When we come back, Christopher Jones, he's the executive director of the Department of Human Services right here in North Dakota. You know, it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about childcare in North Dakota without getting somebody on that's been leading the charge to improve it. Chris Jones, he's the executive director of the Department of Human Services in North Dakota, joining us right now on Afternoons Live. Chris, appreciate your time, man. How you been?
Couldn't be better.
Very good.
Couldn't be better.
Glad to hear that. One thing that I've been saying that we need to do better on is childcare access in the state. And I know that's something that, since you've taken over the role of leading the Department of Human Services, has been one of your top priorities. I'm just curious, how are things going?
Well, I think, you know, I'm naturally a glass half empty type of guy. So that's unfortunately an unfair question. I don't want to give an unfair perspective on it. I think I will do glass half full. I think the amount of movement that there has been over the last 2 years has been quite monumental from a North Dakota standard as as it relates to recognizing that we need to invest in early childhood experiences. And from a workforce perspective and trying to get there, I think where we're struggling is what's the right way to do it, and how do we look at what is the why and what are we trying to achieve? And I think that's what's hard, because anybody who has a child between the ages of 0 and 5, childcare is a huge issue. Once they enter kindergarten, not as big of a deal anymore. And so it's how do we try to show the priority that needs to exist for 0 to 5, not only as it relates to workforce, but creating successful children and families for the future. So that's where I'm a little. I think we're getting there, but we've got to keep the foot on the pedal.
Chris, as someone who's a glass half empty guy myself, we're not so different, you and I, when it comes to just viewing how things are going. One thing that I have noticed in this conversation, though, is I think more and more people are beginning to realize childcare, it's not just about the family. It's really a workforce issue as well. The reason why I got on this topic today was, being from the Devil's Lake Basin, I was up there this weekend, and people are saying, Tyler, you got to read the Pierce County Tribune, and that's out of Rugby. And the school boards here,
I saw the same article.
Yeah,
yep.
So when you've got an entire community saying we've got to do something here, yes, and we keep coming back, we got to do something. But I appreciate you saying we have to identify what the major cause is, because I'm wondering, is it capacity? Is it pay? Is there red tape? What is it that we can do besides just saying, well, that's just something that families got to figure out?
Well, I think the first thing we've got to do is we have to take a step in, empathy is very important, I think, to try to understand these things. So you need to step in the shoes of that situation. So I'm just going to put this in perspective. We are a pro-child, pro-life state. And we do a very good job of investing in a number of different services across the state. But then I look at it's like, okay, we have a 6-month-old child that needs services. And we are comfortable as a state saying that we are willing to pay $10 to $11 an hour for someone with 15 hours of training to care for that 6-month-old. And then I would say, ask yourself, are we comfortable spending that level for anybody else in a social service environment? And then on top of that, that is just for the basics of health and safety, not about education. And I'm not talking about education like ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and colors. I'm talking about teaching about stimulus and how their brain interacts. 95% of a child's brain is formed by the age of 5. That's before they get into kindergarten. And 90% is before the age of 3. So we're only willing to invest the bare minimum on the 0 to 3 in terms of the individuals that interact with these children. And then after that, we continue to ramp up our investment as a state all the way through higher education. So where's our return on investment? So if I'm a business leader, I'm saying, you know what? You invest the dollars in the 0 to 3, and then the 4 to 5, and then through 3rd grade. And then it should be the inverse of what we have right now. And I'm not saying we invest too little in K-12 or too little in higher ed, but if I'm going to get a return on investment from a taxpayer perspective, it's going to be in the 0 to 3.
This reasoning, you got us nodding our heads like, yep, this makes perfect sense. I don't want to get you in trouble by any means, but what's the holdup then? Because, we look at the investment dollars, the potential that North Dakota has. Is the reasoning saying, well, I know during my time in the state Senate here, some of the reasoning was so absurd that I won't pull that in on you, but it seems as though, well, this is no place for the state to be. The tax dollars don't belong in this era, which I don't if it belongs from 5 through 18, why not, up until 5 either? Have we made any progress at changing lawmakers' minds saying, you know what, this investment does have a great return? Is the way I'll ask the question.
Well, the easier, it's easy to say, yes, I think a number of lawmakers are learning And I shouldn't even say learning, because that's not what I mean. I think our society has changed, and government can either influence or impact the way society acts, or can try to direct it. At the end of the day, 75% of households in North Dakota have a dual income household. So to that end, and we need workforce. And so to that end, we cannot, I think many lawmakers are realizing we cannot just say, well, we're going to make it difficult for, we no longer can make it so difficult for both income earners to not find access to childcare. And I think, so that's number one. I think number two is there's been a number of, as time goes on, just the impact of brain development and understanding the clinical studies related to that, the Perry studies, how we make the right investments, I think is just what we continue to learn. And then finally, I think, as with anything in government or life, where we've done things one way for so long, it's hard to change. And I think where traditionally held values are not the same values that exist now, based on the returns you get, based on where the state or the feds are going to spend their dollars. So I think it's unfortunately it's evolutionary and not revolutionary. But I think it's very important that we really take a minute and just think. Right now, it's approximately $9,000 a month to have someone in a nursing home, and it's $1,500 a month to have an infant in childcare. Wow. And so my ask, and granted, the nursing home is 24/7, childcare is about nine hours a day. Are we really comfortable as a state saying there should be that level of disparity between the two, when the ability of those individuals to take care of themselves is in sometimes the equivalent or even not more for a 3-month-old or a 4-month-old or a 5-month-old? And I think we owe it to the children and families to make sure that we've got the right health and safety. And then on top of it, we are respecting the child care workers who do the work and reimburse them appropriately as well.
Chris, final question I have before I let you go here. Just the information you're providing is just so much appreciated here. The thing that I keep getting in the text club from listeners whenever I broach this subject is no place for the government to do this. This needs to be a private sector thing as far as resolving this. You interact with those businesses that are in need of childcare. Have they provided any insight to what they're willing to do, what they're able to do, or is this, hey, you know what, we need the state to step in and really help out because we just can't afford? I'm just curious, your interaction with that private side, explain that to me.
Yeah, so, my background, I've only been 5 years in this role, and prior to that, I was all private. But I would say that there's more and more interest from the business side. I think it's more from a attracting workforce than it is from, recognizing the value that it is, and that's nothing against the private side in any way, shape, or form. But it's kind of picking and choosing the battles you're going to fight on the political side. And so how do we do this? I think many, many employers would really appreciate a public-private partnership as it relates to how to do childcare in a sustainable model going forward. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there, but it's how do you broach the subject when there's all these other pressures and this is considered a new thing. Yeah. So I think they're in a tough spot. But the flip side is if the legislature listens to anyone, they listen to private business. And if the private business brings in a business model for them to consider, the legislature will consider this.
I think that's a word of advice for all your listeners out there, especially business owners that are looking to hire. Chris, I'm out of time here. I appreciate you joining us. You're always so insightful and helpful in breaking this conversation down. Anything else before I let you go?
Yeah. All I would say is if you ever have questions on childcare, I am more than willing to participate in the discussion and appreciate you reaching out.
Well, we appreciate your time and that invitation to do it again. Chris, you take care, man. We'll chat again soon.
You too.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Take care.
Chris Jones, Executive Director of the Department of Human Services. Your messages at 35270. I Consults of North Dakota. I'm coming back to you right after this. About 4 minutes until the top of the hour. Then it'll be 4 o'clock, and Derek Hansen's going to be taking over. Amy, thanks for taking over behind the board. Appreciate
anytime.
it. Child care is important to kids, too. It's pivotal for brain development. Comes in one more. Tyler, a $15 job, even 20 does not pay child care and health insurance. They are important jobs in society and deserve a standard of living. Yeah, I think we're in agreement. Something needs to be done. It's not exactly how we get there. We'll talk about that because more messages in. But also sports, Derek Hansen. Recap the weekend that was next.
34 degrees now in sunny skies at our KFGO studios. More Afternoons Live after CBS and KFGO News.
We'll check back in with Paul Jurgens at the KFGO News Center in just a moment. Then recap the weekend of sports. Derek Hansen now behind the board. You guys just been passing me around every hour. Is there some contract back there, some agreement saying no longer than 60 minutes for
It's
each
better
year?
than the alternative.
Yeah, fair.
Board up in your own show. I've been in that thing before.
That's why I choose not to learn. It's job security for all you producers back there. That's the deal. I'd ask to start off the show because, you know what? Somebody woke up this morning after spending $500,000 to buy what he thought was Tom Brady's last touchdown football. Oh, and find out well, now he's back. What's the purchase that you've made that 24 hours later you're like, oh my God, what have I done? That buyer's remorse purchase for you. You think about that.
Trying to make sure everything's legal before I bring it up. So.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. I don't want to be getting you in trouble with the law or anybody from the household that might be listening. You can join that conversation at 35270. I want to get this one message out before we switch gears to sports. Tyler, I disagree we should be subsidizing the parents so they can stay home and teach their kids. We don't need the government to be teaching the kids at a very young age. If that's the case, can you agree to not complain that people don't want to work? Because they're having to choose between going to work or staying home and raising their kids because they can't afford to do both. We'll come back to that response and all the sports news right after this.
KFGO News, Fargo-Moorhead. It is mostly sunny, 33. I'm Paul Juergens. Fire has caused heavy damage to the Lake Park, Minnesota American Legion. Police Chief Brady Burnside says there was significant heat and smoke damage, mostly to the interior of the building. An east wall that burned through to the outside contained a large number of photos of auxiliary members which were destroyed. Burnside says decades of the club's history was lost. However, firefighters were able to save other memorabilia, including some military items from another part of the building. No one was in the building when the fire broke out around 8 last night. The state fire marshal's office is investigating the cause. Lake Park fire crews were assisted by departments from Callaway, Hitterdall, Audubon, and Hawley. The Department of Transportation has ordered that SkyWest Airlines continue to serve 29 smaller cities, including Devils Lake and Jamestown, until a replacement airline can be found. The Utah-based airline, flying under the United Express banner, notified the DOT last week that it plans to eliminate service by June 10th. It cited a lack of pilots for the decision. The flights are offered as part of the government's Essential Air Service program. The DOT order prevents SkyWest from discontinuing service until an alternative airline is in place. Interested carriers have been asked to submit their proposals by April 11th. A 2-year-old boy was in critical but stable condition after he was shot in the face in an apartment building in Minneapolis. Officers responded to a report of a child bleeding from the face due to a stabbing or gunshot. The early investigation indicates that the child was staying with a family member who was not a parent at the time of the shooting. Police say they were given only limited information at the scene. No arrests have been made. The North Dakota State Hospital continues to address recruitment and retention as it moves past the COVID-19 pandemic. Human Resources Officer Bobby Miller says recruitment continues to be a challenge, with the state unemployment rate sitting at about 2.8%.
Recruitment continues to be a great challenge. It does make it difficult to attract new employees from surrounding areas and the communities. There's not a plethora of people looking for jobs, so it makes it very hard on the unemployment rate. So we're trying to continue to learn and research effective ways to try and attract talent from other states or counties or even countries.
The annual turnover rate at the state hospital is 21%, which is higher than the national turnover rate of about 19%. There are 91 vacant positions at the hospital in Jamestown. KFGO Weather Center forecast. Fargo-Moorhead, lower 30s for our high this afternoon. We are at 33. Overnight, mid-20s, mostly clear. Will be mostly sunny tomorrow and 38. 33, Paul Juergens, News Radio KFGO.
Final hour of Afternoons Live getting underway on a Monday afternoon. Derek Hansen behind the board. I'm Tyler X as your host. Be with you till 5 o'clock here. Every Monday at this time, we talk about sports. The weekend that was, a lot to unpack. Let's start at the high school level.
Yeah.
Okay, and let me throw this out there because we've kind of teased about this before. Because we think about, like the premier event in North Dakota is Class B boys. You got to say that high school hockey in Minnesota, which you've got 19,000 fans.
Yes.
Oh my God, it was just, the scene was incredible out there.
It was amazing. I was listening to a lot of Matt English and Jack Michaels on our sister station calling that game. Then I was flipping to the UND hockey game, but I had the video on my TV screen up on that game. It wasn't until all other stuff I was actually turning, because obviously with 2 overtimes, Andover and Maple Grove, it was one of those things where I had to turn it up. And Lou Nanny, Mr. Hockey of the voice of hockey for Minnesota hockey for a very long time, just oohing and ahhing over everything. It was quite a deal. And honestly, that game, maybe one of the best hockey games at any level I've ever seen. It was crazy.
Yeah,
and Andover won, the team that beat Minnesota. Obviously, Mark Manny, the head coach from Moorhead, some of his staff from Moorhead as well. It was really something else. And how often do you say 6-5 and the goaltenders were amazing? Because it might have been 12-11 if they wouldn't have stopped some of those breakaway shots. So really just a great game there. And, of course, on the Class A side, a pretty good crowd in Bismarck, too, with everything. It was a fun weekend to celebrate all levels of sports and of course, off-the-field news, too.
We'll get to that.
Yeah,
a lot of news there.
Bonkers.
I was up in Devil's Lake. I was watching the championship game over at Pops in town on Highway 2 there. And one thing I learned up there is everybody in that region was going for Minot.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, they wanted somebody from the West. They're like, you know what? We've seen enough of Fargo's, the West Fargo's, all of this. Give us Minot.
Not surprising at all to me.
Yeah, it was noticeable. I was surprised how vocal they were for Minot. But the question, because I've always been of the mind that Class B boys, nothing touches it. After watching some of that, what you guys had on that side of the river for high school hockey, I think the environment has to be more electric there for that tournament than Class B boys in North Dakota.
Yeah, I think it's hard to compare, right? Because, you're talking about such a 19,000 people. That's, to sell out a arena that the NHL team plays in, that's pretty bonkers.
That's insane.
And it's just more or less people that go because they want to be a part of it. It's not even, it wasn't Andover and Maple Grove people filling up. That was just everyone who wants to be involved in it. And I heard Lou Nanny say it was the best game that I've seen at high school hockey in the championship game since Edina beat Warroad 5-4. Henry Boucher was the big star for the Warriors back then. 1969 is when the tournament actually kind of really stepped up to that next level, because the North Star's new arena was built, the Met Center in Bloomington, and it was like 15,000 people at the time, and it was just wall to wall. And people wanted to see Henry, obviously former NHL great, and he might be listening right now if he's up north. So and just a great guy. I met him actually at the
you can call in if you are listening.
DAPL protest
5948.
And he got injured in the game because someone boarded it, checked him real hard, and then got an elbow up in his ear, and he had to go to the hospital. Otherwise, it might have been a different outcome for Warroad. It would have won their state championship at that one class system, but of course. They fell short a little bit in the A game, but to put that up in that stratosphere where you're talking about Edina, the evil empire taking on Little Warroad, that really tells you how good of a game that was Saturday night.
Well, and I think you're right. It's tough to compare the two, but I think the sentiment is right. When you say, look, that wasn't just the fans of these teams, or that people put this on their calendar, market, that's the vacation. I know of a couple good friends of mine from the Marion area. They don't have to have anybody playing in the Class B. They're going every year. That's their vacation.
When you see
not North Dakota.
When I went to the Frozen Four semifinals, that's the one thing that really stood out for me when I was in Tampa, is that it wasn't just all UND and Denver and that type of thing either. It was it was a lot of I saw a lot of Bemidji State jerseys. That just people go to the event to be a part of the event every year, and certainly has been the case for the Class B. That's they just want to be at the B. And that's the one thing. I just had an interesting conversation with our Joe Morgan about this, going 3 classes and all that. And I really warn against that. I think there's a way to do it without having to break up a whole new tournament, and just kind of maybe make we can get into that again. I think when I look at the B this year, in the teams that are in it, when you're talking Shiloh and Ryan and big schools like Kindred, and I think at some point you let maybe you have 2 A's where the big B's and the privates go to that, and maybe some of the smaller double A's go down to an A, and then they combine all those teams in a state tournament to play each other. Because
you literally wrote this out in a graph form for me. I'm like, okay, I could get behind this. Because you know what happened when you looked at what the Class B is? When you see the 2 privates paired up in the first round, there's a lot of cheering going on across North Dakota.
Well, you almost wonder if it wasn't on purpose.
Exactly.
I mean, and I don't think anyone would complain if it was, to be quite frank, just the way it's set up. Yeah, because like in the girls thing, when you have Grafton and all that, that's a big B school. And I think that's the one thing. I think the B fans in a town the size of your hometown, Leeds, want it to be the B again. And when you got these, kind of outlying suburbs of Fargo-Moorhead, like Kindred and Central Cass, nothing against you, because I know you're enjoying this, but I think you admit your enrollment's going up where a lot of the outlying schools are going down, and you're seeing more consolidation. So
now that's the why I was open to the whole three class. Now you brought in a whole other angle that I'm open to. It's the fact that you can look at any team now and it's got 4 letters of the alphabet because it's all consolidated. To where at that one point that quite frankly wasn't all that long ago, that would be the entire region playing against each other. Now they're all in one team.
Right.
And I think the nostalgia of wanting to have every 30 miles is where you're going to go when you're going to be playing against that town. That's not there anymore.
Yeah.
And now it's 3 hours people are driving.
Yeah, so and I don't even know it's so much that they consolidate to compete more with some of the bigger schools. They just need numbers. It's the other thing of just kids don't necessarily always want to go out. They would rather work in the farm or whatever it might be. I don't know. So it's interesting how they're play it out. But that's been my idea is as we get these double A schools becoming bigger, I'd take the Bismarcks, the Minots, the Fargos, all that, make them double A. The Grand Forks is. And then take the Valley Cities and let them go to A along with, Grafton and probably Wahpeton would probably go down to A, and then they could play the Kindreds, because I think Kindred would compete with any of those. Looking at both the boys and girls this year, and then you have that, because I think I don't know if they'd win all the time, but certainly you look at the teams that they're playing. I'd love to see a Kindred versus West Fargo type of game.
Can you imagine that gymnasium?
Yeah, I mean that would be great, and that would be the semifinal under my plan, and I think. And
trademark it. Get the high school association.
Would it be harder to win? Yes. Would it be harder to get to state maybe for some of these schools? Yes, certainly, but it's okay for it to be hard to get to state. It's not supposed to be easy to get to state. I don't care what level it is.
Tyler, those are fighting words. Hand in your Class B badge. Look, I'm just being a fair observer here. Now, Class B is the premier in North Dakota, the Class B boys tournament. I mean, like I said, people circle their calendars. Okay, we going to Minot this year. We going to Bismarck this year. But if you watched any of the hockey in Minnesota this weekend and then get goosebumps by the energy in that building, boy, check that pulse.
Something else.
And someone wants to put all the church schools in their own league.
Well, I think we can make it work where, people have talked about wanting to put them up in the A's all the time. Well, I don't know if Oak Grove could do that all the time.
Right.
But some years they've had teams that could compete with a lot of those schools, too.
Mm-hmm. How about we talk about some of the off-field stuff, off-court stuff when we come back? Because you got Twins making some moves, big moves, surprising moves. They got to be thinking about something big coming down the pipe here, right? Also, Kirk Cousins, he's not going anywhere. Tom Brady, well, I guess he's not going anywhere either. We'll talk about all that and more on Afternoons Live. Stick around. Now that baseball is back, I'm actually excited. I can officially tell you that Chris Atterbury is going to be back on Wednesdays.
How about that?
Finally, we're excited to have him. But, because of his employment with the Twins, it was pretty difficult to see when, in fact, we were going to be able to pick that up. But that's brought to you by Linux of Fargo-Moorhead. You can find them right on Main and West Fargo for truck accessories and so much more. Twins, boy, they made some moves over the weekend.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy just with everything that was going on. And since you're promoting things, if you've been looking for something to, it's going to be a little bit nicer this weekend, Saturday afternoon right here on KFGO, Twins Spring Training Baseball.
Love it.
How good is that going to feel? And hopefully it'll be right before UND NCHC Frozen Face-Off Championship game. But yeah, so that's coming up. The Friday afternoon game will be on the Fan before the Class B semifinals. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. I didn't understand kind of how they were doing things, and there's a feeling amongst half the Twins fan base that they really, really need a shortstop, even though they have some young guys in Polanco that could go over there and play it. And then they trade away Mitch Garver, which I understood that he might be dealt.
He's going to Texas now.
But and so then a guy doesn't even put on the hat in a press conference before he gets shipped to the Yankees the next day. It was very strange. And then you get rid of Josh Donaldson in the $50 million, which that signing just didn't work out. And
it didn't. It I think to a lot of people's surprise, because I remember, oh my God, we got Donaldson. This is great. I mean, look what he's been able to do. For whatever reason, it just didn't work for him in Minnesota. Now, if you've been following, national media and how their coverage of the Yankees and how their lineup's just phenomenal, they got Donaldson. You think, Jesus, they're already going to crown him.
Yeah. Well, he also has to stay healthy, though. That's the other thing. Right. It's kind of like what we're talking about with Daniil Hunter of the Vikings. Yeah, he's great, but he's got to stay healthy, and he hasn't the last 2 years. And so hopefully, for his sake that he can. And my luck is he's always killed the Twins when he was with the Blue Jays, that he'll go back and he'll go to the Yankees and he'll hit like 5 home runs in whatever series they have.
Yeah, it'll be like a play-in game or it'll be some playoff game.
Well, they get to the point where they're in a playoff game. I'm feeling pretty good about life. But, they pick up the pitcher from
Sonny Gray.
Yeah, Sonny Gray is that, they have another arm, considering that Kenta Maeda, we don't know when he'll be back from his Tommy John surgery, and that might be a slow process getting back. I think late August is probably the best that we could hope for with that. So, we shall see. I think it's exciting just that baseball back, how good the Twins will be. That's a whole different story.
Yeah, well, and that's where when we talk about all these transactions, the little circle of Twins fandom that I do follow online is we don't make all these moves unless we have something big planned, right? And that's the whole, they're trying to convince themselves that there's some grand scheme going on in the organization, that there's a reason why we made all these, because, boy, you just wait. Give us a week.
Well,
give us 1 week.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I mean, I think they're just trying to keep their, trying to
themselves.
Well, they're trying to shift to kind of make some changes here. And it's just that the rotation is so full of young guys. I just don't know how it's going to work out for them. So we shall see. I hope that they can pull it off. That's for sure. But the bottom line is that they're back. That's the good news. I think that as long as they can stay a little bit relevant through July, and then you start talking about, football. Yeah. And that's how it goes.
We never really stopped talking about
football.
No,
that's true. That's a very good point. But as far as the baseball is concerned, the other thing to watch right now is the American League Central, because that's the question. Who is really going to step up and be that? The White Sox have been going in the right direction, obviously. Cleveland, we just don't know. Kansas City, they've been trying to crawl out after winning a World Series a few years ago. They're trying to get back to that point. Detroit's still in rebuilding mode. So, if you're going to look at a silver lining anything, there's not a great team in there besides probably the White Sox.
Doors wide open, Twins fans. That's what you're hearing right there.
We shall see.
We shall see.
But the bottom line is on April 7th, we'll be talking about Twins baseball. Target Field open up against Seattle. And when you start thinking about that and you look outside and it's melting out right now.
It's like 30 degrees and I might as well be wearing flip-flops and a tank top right now.
It just changes your mood for everything. So that's the good news there.
That does. Messages coming in to the iConsultants of North Dakota Text Club. That's 35270. Tyler, we got rid of Donaldson's contract, comes in. Another one, Tyler, are there enough officials to expand to this new speculation format? No, they're not officials the way it is right now.
Well, they can probably get it for the state tournaments, but I think the bigger question is how are you going to run another weekend of tournaments in March? If you have a Class C and a Class B tournament, you're going to overlap that? I don't know. You don't want to do that.
The sheer mechanics of it have not. This is just Derek Hansen putting pen to paper and getting me to say, hey, that's not a bad idea. You know, it's not a bad idea. Getting you caught up with some KFGO news. Let's send you over to Paul Jurgens and wrap up final half hour next.
And it's brought to you by Otter Tail Power Company, positively impacting communities they serve for more than a century.
Mostly sunny, Fargo-Moorhead 32. I'm Paul Jurgens. Fire has caused heavy damage to the Lake Park, Minnesota American Legion.
Very unfortunate for a small town American Legion club. Fire was called in by a passerby at 8:12 Sunday night, called into Becker County Dispatch. Lake Park Fire responded along with assistance from Callaway, Hitterdall, Audubon, and Hawley.
Lake Park Police Chief Brady says the one wall that burned through to the outside contained a large number of photos of auxiliary members which were destroyed by the fire. Decades of the club's history was lost. He says there's no indication of arson. A deputy state fire marshal is looking for the cause. The federal DOT has ordered that SkyWest Airlines continue to serve 29 smaller cities, including Devils Lake and Jamestown, until a replacement airline can be found. The Utah-based airline, flying under the United Express brand, notified the DOT last week that it plans to eliminate service by June 10th. It cited a lack of pilots for the decision. The flights are offered as part of the government's Essential Air Service program. The DOT order prevents SkyWest from discontinuing service until an alternate airline is in place. Interested carriers have been asked to submit their proposals by April 11th. SkyWest has been providing daily flights between Devils Lake, Jamestown, and Denver since 2014. 32, this is KFGO News. This is KFGO News. 2 passengers in a car that was used to flee a traffic stop were arrested by Clay County deputies after that vehicle got stuck and the driver managed to slip away. Sheriff Mark Empting says a deputy attempted to conduct a traffic stop early yesterday on 60th Avenue South. The driver continued eastbound with speeds reaching 80 miles an hour. The driver then drove down a dead-end road where the vehicle became stuck near I-94. The driver then ran. A passenger, identified as 36-year-old Martin Torres Jr., also tried to free the struck vehicle before he ran away. A deputy used a taser and a canine to capture him. Torres also had an outstanding warrant for fleeing and gun violations. Another passenger was taken to the Clay County Jail for an outstanding warrant. Empting says deputies plan to arrest the driver after a warrant is issued. St. Louis Park, Minnesota police say 2 shoplifting suspects rammed several squad cars while trying to get away. Officers responded to the shoplifting report from Kohl's. One officer was nearly pinned between the suspect car and his own, and a second officer suffered minor injuries. 5 squad cars were damaged. The suspects led police on a chase before their car crashed. They were caught quickly. Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar has joined teachers during a unity rally for safe and stable schools as the Minneapolis teacher strike moves into its second week. Both sides inch closer to their goals over the weekend, but the school district says its most recent offer is its financial limit. Sean Layden, president of the Educational Support Professional Chapters of the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, spoke from the picket line.
We've been very clear. Let's get contract language around class size. Let's get contract language around mental health supports. Let's get living wages for education support professionals. And let's see competitive pay for a licensed staff.
Time lost in the classroom due to the strike will be made up either over spring break, extending the school year, reducing professional development days, or other means that meet the state's requirements. Former Minnesota Republican Party Chairwoman Jennifer Carnahan is getting into the race to replace her husband, Jim Hagedorn, in Congress. Carnahan says she is committed to continuing her late husband's legacy of fighting to secure the border, defending conservative values, and safeguarding the integrity of elections. Carnahan joins a crowded field of candidates, including at least 8 other Republicans, along with 6 Democrats and 1 Legal Marijuana Now party candidate. South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem's election year fight with fellow Republicans in the legislature has spurred criticism that she is neglecting her job to angle for the White House. Noem in recent weeks flew to Florida to speak at a major gathering of conservative activists, announced the release of her autobiography, and blasted President Biden's energy policy as Russia invaded Ukraine. Back home, Noem has faced considerable defiance from members of her own party on key parts of her agenda, including abortion, school prayer, and how racism is taught in schools. Fargo-Moorhead, a clear night. We expect an overnight low of about 25 degrees. Tomorrow, mostly sunny, 38, about 43. The high on Wednesday, mostly cloudy to start the day, and then some sunshine. Thursday through Sunday looks like 30s to low to mid-40s. Fargo-Moorhead, mostly sunny, 32. Paul Juergens, News Radio, KFGO.
When we come back after your national news headlines brought to you by CBS, we'll talk about Kirk Cousins. He ain't going anywhere. Is the new coaching staff and organization around him to get to that next level? We'll ask Derek Hansen. He's my guest for the next half hour. Here's what's coming up later on. You got to do the Drive Time News, Couch Potato Radio, Timberwolves at San Antonio tonight here on KFGO. If you're just joining us, we've been talking off and on about Class A, Class B, Class C. Do you have a comment? How do you make this work? Derek Hansen put a marker on a whiteboard and explained it to me, and he verbally did that for you. Tyler, I totally agree. This is at the text club, by the way. I totally agree about Class B basketball. I live in Enderlin, and our boys' team was the best it has been since 1996. And still couldn't get past the Kindred powerhouse. We have struggled against Central Cass and Kindred for years. No way they should still be Class B. They're hitching up to your bandwagon.
Yeah. Well, and I know that's probably an unpopular opinion with a lot of the people in those schools too, but that's kind of the
likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I maybe should explain the idea I have a little bit better, because I think having 4 teams from each region in A right now is a little bit much. I think what I would do is have an A tournament, which would feature schools in Class A and Class AA, and you'd have 2 schools in each region from AA and A, and then you kind of mix it so you would guarantee a semifinal between the 2 A schools and AA. AA schools, Fargo's, the Bismarcks, Minot, what have you. The A schools would feature some of the big B's, the private schools, and some of the smaller current A schools like the Valley C, like Wapaton, that would maybe fit in. And my eyeball test tells me that Kindred can hang out with almost anyone I watched this past weekend. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're that good. Mm-hmm. And I'm in a very similar community as Central Cass and Kindred. We're growing because we're 25 minutes from Fargo. Yeah. Hawley's the same way. And so you look at DGF, how much they've grown. Dilworth, Linden, Felton, those are 2 small schools that consolidated. Now they've jumped up a class even from where we're at, right? And football and some other sports. And it's not going to go away. What I'm telling the folks in Kindred, enjoy this. Going up against West Fargo would be fun for you in the semifinals.
I think so, too.
I think people would be, I think the state would be going, look at this. They'd be cheering for you.
Yeah,
now you're becoming the evil empire, much like Oak Grove was
just
for all the
as
years.
Everybody that's not from this region was cheering for Minot in the Class A. I mean, that you would be the underdogs, which you got everybody that was watching you in Class B saying, you know what, go get them.
Yeah,
go get them in West Fargo.
And I think it would be a better tournament. I can tell you from the state I live in, when we went from 4 classes, it's kind of, you don't know where everyone is around the region. And watching a little bit of New York Mills this year, they're an A school. I think they could hang with anyone in our section in AA. I just think there's one too many classes in Minnesota. So I certainly would think there'd be one too many classes in North Dakota.
If we did.
And there's less schools. I mean, there's less B schools now. Why do you need to separate them just for the fact that certain schools, you look at this Class B tournament, we're going to watch it, we're going to love it, but Shiloh and Ryan and Kindred and, you're looking, just go down the line. It's big schools that are making it now.
Getting bigger by
and they're getting bigger,
folks,
and the other schools are going a different direction.
Way. Yeah.
I mean, Milner won it, a couple of 7 years ago or something like that. Now they're combined with one of their arch rivals that used to be one of the better games within their region, right?
See, that's what I was talking about. You had all those rivalries that were all within that 30, 40 mile radius, and now you're the same team.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's taken a little bit of the.
Yeah, Milner was a true Class B school that won it. I mean, that was a fun team. And so I think that's what you do. Getting more classes with less schools within the state is not going to be a better thing for you. I can tell you that firsthand. And there's people in earshot of me right now. Now that we have our section tournament and Detroit Lakes and whatever, getting to the regions was a big deal. If you got from District 23A to the region 6A, that was a big deal. And if you made it to state, that was a huge deal. And there's something okay. And if you didn't win it all, that's okay,
still
too.
Made it. Yeah, you're still coming home with that plaque that says I was there.
And if you're as lucky as like the 1984 Pelican Rapids Vikings, yes, that was great. I mean, but that was a 2-class system. So I think we're kind of prioritizing we should be I mean, I think even back when it was Region 1, Region 2, or District 1 and District 2 getting into Region 1, that was a big deal. So I think we have to prioritize the fact that this is
odds of anything changing. I mean, it seems.
Well, my idea doesn't sound like it's a little. It sounds like there's a real push to get this 3-class thing.
The more I've heard more within the last month in North Dakota saying we've got to mix this up somehow. It leads me to believe that something will happen, but I don't know what. Mm-hmm. And it's probably, as you said, they're going to just add that Class C is probably the path we're on.
Yeah, and they might call it B and A and AA, but then you're going to have I think the last thing that you want to be, because they're. And for the Kindred Texture, they're going to put you in A, and they're going to make it double A if that's what they want to do. They want to have the B schools be the B schools. Then they're going to do it anyway, but have 3 tournaments instead of 2. Yeah. That's the mistake I think they could make.
And what's in a name? A, B, C, it's all there.
But I think there's something to the B, right? North Dakota.
Yeah, right. That's
that brand.
You can't take that from us.
Yeah.
That's Class B for life. 237-5948. Tom Brady, he's back. I don't know. Maybe he must have spent 2 months with the family and decided, you know what? I think I'd rather be out on the field because I was surprised. I mean, I really was. I thought that the decision was there. And Gazelle said, Tom, it's time to come home. I can't deal with this flying over the world. You just spend more time. Well, he's back. Were you surprised by it? Because I certainly was.
I wasn't, no. But granted, I lived through the Brett Favre thing too. So I mean, how many times did he retire and then come back? So right. I think he made a rush decision deciding what he wanted to do. I think Adam Schefter almost kind of put him in a spot where he maybe heard it and then he almost felt like he had to do it, and then and then he, I think it shows you it shows you that you have to really take some time before you contemplate anything. After a very emotional loss in the playoffs to the Rams, you just kind of have to think about something before you. For a long time, maybe well into February. It didn't take 2 weeks after it was announced that people were speculating he's going to come back.
Here's my cynicism. You think that he wanted to retire from Tampa, then just to come back, and they would say, okay, well, since he's done, we'll allow a trade if they wanted, and then they didn't let him trade?
Right. That could be. Because the rumors are that, there's rumors they maybe want to go back home to San Francisco, so and that could be too. I don't know, but it's
nor do I. But
it's an interesting time. I think the Carson Wentz trade and Russell Wilson trade kind of actually, where they thought there'd be more movement, it actually kind of stopped some of it because Cousins might have gone to Denver maybe, but then there's for people who wanted to trade to trade Cousins, there's no teams to trade with anymore after that because the Colts don't have a first round pick, the Seahawks don't have a first round pick, and I don't think the Vikings brass wanted to give up Cousins unless they got a number 1 overall.
And that wasn't going to happen.
Number 1, I should say, just the number 1 pick.
Yeah, and that wasn't happening in Carolina either.
No,
because that was the first rumors. Carolina's on the phone. They want Cousins, and I was glad that we aren't getting Cousins, but he's staying with you guys for another year at least. For the level of wins, losses, and you can say whether or not that's a quarterback stat or not. He's still one of the top paid quarterbacks over his stretch for not winning championships. The guy's got to have either the top talent agent.
Not winning championships. He's a little bit below 500.
Yes, okay. Yeah, he's a mediocre quarterback.
He's a 500 quarterback. He puts up fantasy football numbers, and that's what a lot of people get fooled on. Stats sometimes can fool you. Stats don't mean team success a lot. They just don't. And he's living proof of that. And I hear it all the time. Well, his defense, his line. The bottom line is his quarterback. There's not a perfect pocket when you were watching the Super Bowl last year with the 2 quarterbacks that were involved in that game, right? But yet Matthew Stafford found a way to get it done. And if you can give me the Kirk Cousins that had that game-winning drive against the Saints a couple years ago in the playoffs, I'll take that. But you need to have a little bit more of that. Well, against your Panthers, that's a drive. It
was. Yeah, I know. Trust me, I'm reminded about every time we play that sounder that you made.
But in all seriousness, and a serious conversation about it, if you saw that at the end of a game, and also if you have a 4-minute offense that completes the game so you're not in those situations and not putting your defense in a situation where they're against their heels in a 2-minute warning, well, then maybe you win some more games. So that it does kind of fall on him on those things. It really does. It does for every other quarterback in the league. I don't know why it would be any different for him. The Kirk Cousins fans, they just always want to find a reason not to blame him. And he's not to blame for everything. No. But he's still your record is your record, right?
Do you draft a quarterback this year?
I don't know. You look at a guy like we don't know anything about Kellen Mond, and just because Mike Zimmer said he wasn't any good doesn't mean that we don't know, right? So
is there a player that Zim gave compliments to?
Well, that's just it. So that's not going to be my judge on him, but if they fall in love with a guy that falls to him, it's not a huge quarterback draft, so I don't know if there's, I don't think it'd be a first round type of selection. No. I really don't, but we shall see. The draft's going to be interesting because it's not going to be Rick Spielman trading down and getting 13 picks now.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what this brass, what Menza, the general manager, and now what Kevin O'Connell want to do.
Tyler Gronkowski made Tom come out of retirement this time.
That could be.
Instead of the other way around. Thanks for sending that in. I'm going to get you some more messages on the way. We'll see what's coming up on the Drive Time News. Derek's got a great guest coming up on Couch Potato Radio. I'll tell you about that on the final segment of Afternoons Live next. Final segment of Afternoons Live getting underway. I'm Tyler Axis here. It's Derek Cass, and every Monday we talk about the weekend that was in sports. And here's what we're talking about off air, because we have this debate going on about Class B. What's the chain restaurant in a small town that you say, you know what, no longer is this a small town. This is no longer a B school, because we're talking about one that's got a Burger King. And if you've got a Burger King in your town, you're not a small town anymore.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Even when, under the Eddie Byer thing, people thought they were the big evil. Hillsborough was the big evil B.
Oh, yeah, Hillsborough's a town we're talking about. Hillsborough, You're not a small town anymore. You got a Burger King, a Subway, three gas stations.
I found this text interesting, but I think, Texture, I agree with you on this, but I think the perception, and I think you might be from Kindred, I'm not sure, I can't tell, but the last 10 Class B champions, Tyler, Kindred, their first ever. Granted, I'm looking forward here. Thompson, Hillsborough, 4 wins, Minnewacan, which is a whole different animal that if you talk to that region, right?
That's my region.
4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Rugby, Oak Grove Private School. And then I brought up Milner because I just know from my days of traveling, whatever, that was the last time that people I talked to feel like that was the last true B.
True B.
Now, Kindred, I get what you're saying. Kindred is not the small school, though. When I graduated and I had buddies from there in 1991, you are going in a different direction, much like my hometown is doing. So while it's great, the perception of Kindred now is a big B school,
Yes.
right?
Well, not just here.
And it's getting bigger.
Watch how I mash up segments on Afternoons Live into one statement here. We have Eric Hatch, keeping it real, every second Wednesday of the month. Well, that last Wednesday was that time, and we're talking about, because Fargo and West Fargo, you know what? You've got your boundaries now. You know how far out you're going. Realty and the realtors are saying it's going to be the Kindreds, the Argusvilles, the Barnesvilles, the Mapletons.
Holly.
Those are going to be the areas where you're going to continue to see the growth at this rate that we've become accustomed to. So at what point, I mean, if that's going to be it, if Kindred's going to keep getting as many people that, I'm going to live in Kindred, I might work in West Fargo, that population is just changing the whole dynamics of this conversation.
Yeah, so we're looking forward. Congratulations, Kindred. They deserve it, all that. I don't want to take anything away from them. I'll be pulling for them to do very well in the B. I have a lot of friends from over there. But the point is, we're looking down the road here of where we're at in the perception of it, because you don't want to be the evil empire, and you might want new challenges down the road. We went from Class A to Class AA in football, and we've been able to be competitive. And that's kind of what I'm talking about right here. And
the thing is, you're even saying that they're going to be competitive.
Yes,
if they
absolutely.
Take that lead,
I think there's going to be something that you'll enjoy out of this more, and I think the rest of the state will enjoy it, because I'm just calling it what it is here. Oak Grove, people in that region have pulled against them for obvious reasons. People do not like Shiloh and Bishop Bryan and Oak Grove.
As I said this weekend, when the bracket comes out, when you see that the two privates are right against each other in that first round, people were celebrating in the Class B.
Yep.
You got Couch Potato Radio. You got some great guests coming up.
Yeah, Patrick Royce, Star Tribune columnist. He has a podcast, Royce Unchanged, with all the Minnesota sports stuff. He's a big baseball guy, too. Twins are back. Get his thoughts on. He's not a big fan of Rob Manfred, so you ask him about that. He was at the hockey. Yeah, ask him about the hockey tournament, obviously, that he was at, and then talk a little bit about Kirk Cousins, too. So that's coming up at 6:15 for Couch Potato Radio after the Drive Time News Hour.
Very good, folks. That's it for me today. Tomorrow we got a whole lineup for you. We're going to talk about that carbon capture plant. We got a specialist coming on to talk about all that and so much more. I'm Tyler Axis, your host here on Afternoons Live. I'll be back tomorrow from 2 to 5. Till then, you drive safe and take care of yourselves. I'll check in right here on KFGO.